Hey guys, you are talking to Riri. I come to talk to you about what I have either read in the blogs, watched on TV, or heard in these streets. We are talking about what I have watched on TV. Yup, it is 90 Day Fiancé, Season 4, Episode 7 of The Other Way. We are doing The Other Way. I forgot to mention that. So yeah, we are moving further along and I am so happy about it. So if this is your first time here, my name is Ree, where I just talk about different reality shows and also like some of the things that, we read in the blogs. Lately, I've been focused on the reality shows because they have just been giving me a hoot. If you like what you hear, please come back for more. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. Make sure you comment. We are growing this channel together. I love the comments that I'm reading so far. I love the feedback that you guys are giving me. It really makes my day. So I want to hear more from you guys. Continue to leave those comments and opinions. Let's laugh together at some of these crazy couples. So let's start it off. Let's get Jamie and Chris out of the way. We start off where Chris is still in bed going through withdrawals. As you guys know, I've already told you guys last episode, but actually I've told you guys a couple of times that I do feel like Chris has an opioid addiction. She just rings off signs of it. Again, I do not know this woman, so this is all allegedly. These are just strictly my opinion. But yeah, like this woman ended off last episode going through withdrawal based on my opinion. And she starts off this episode still battling her withdrawal. And, Jamie is just like, hey, I want to go and visit my friends. She's like, yeah, you can go ahead and go. I'm going to lay in this bed. Girl. This woman is going through it. Oh my God. So Jamie goes to meet with her two friends and she's telling them about what's going on. And she's like, hey, like she has to go back to Alabama, apparently to deal with some court date. Now her friends, just like I've called out, just like many of us have called out, they're just like, this is BS. This sounds like a ridiculous story, and it doesn't sound like she's really trying to marry you. It doesn't sound like she's really trying to commit. But Jamie is still hopeful, and so that's where we leave it off with them. I'm on the friend side, as you guys know. I do not think that Chris is trying to commit for long term. I know we've seen preview of the previous episodes, but even within those previews, we see that she is still having true commitment, stability type of problems. And it makes me question her previous what, 3 or 4 marriages. I really wonder how that ended. But we move on. Let's get down to Gabriel and Isabel. So I'm really loving them. As you guys know, they are my favorite couple this season. I am loving every bit of them. We start off with Gabriel meeting his friend Trey in the park as they are shooting basketball. He ends up telling his friend that, hey, I am trans. The friend had no clue. He's like, man, like everything about you is of a biological male. Would not have assumed it. But the friend is like, listen, no big deal. You're still my boy. Okay, so then they go and they meet up later on with Isabel, and we find out that Isabel doesn't even like Trey because she thinks that Trey is a player. Every time you see him, he is with a new girl. I wonder if Trey is one of these guys that came out there as well, just, having a good old time of fun. Who knows? But she doesn't like him as a friend for Gabriel. But whatever, we move on. Let's get to the meat and the potatoes of their relationship during this episode, which is him meeting their parents. Her parents are absolutely amazing. You can tell she comes from a very, very loving home. But you can tell that within Isabella herself. Like everything about her just exudes calm and just acceptance and just love. Like her parents definitely raised her well, and they seem to be pretty awesome as well. They love Gabriel. They're asking him about the direction of their relationship, and he tells them that he's actually decided to move out there for good. So they're pretty happy with him, and I just really hope that happiness remains when he finally tells them that he is trans. And everyone's nervous because the parents are very religious, and Gabriel has confessed that majority of his issues or the trolling that he receives online, the backlash is usually coming from those who are religious. And I can totally see that because religious people for sure would give him a hard time. But, her parents seems to be extremely loving. And I think also because, Isabel already has children as well. So it's not as if like they're looking for grandkids. She gave them a boy and a girl. I wonder if the parents would be able to accept that and just move past it. You know what I mean? But I'm rooting for them so hard. I want them to make it. Let's move on to Rish and Jin. We find out that Jin is a nincompoop. That girl is absolutely a nincompoop. Let's get some of the small stuff out of the way. She meets up with Rish and she tells him that, listen, this whole me being your servant or me, you know, having the relationship with you that your mother has in the family, that type of submissiveness, I'm just not for. I'm not for it. And as a matter of fact, if our relationship continues and it progresses, I would like for us to get a place away from your family. So he's like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. Once again, I'm mad that this is not a conversation that they had before she brought her tail out there to India. There's no way that in 2 years y'all didn't have these conversations and y'all are supposedly engaged. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, moving on to other conversations they didn't have. Jen, who last episode brags about her two, well, let me not say brags, but mentions her two master's degree. You mean to tell me that with those thesis papers that you were writing and so forth, you didn't learn how to read documents? Like, borderline impossible. So she goes down to an immigration lawyer because she's trying to see as far as, okay, I know that it's coming to an end soon when I need to head back to the United States for my tourist visa and then I'll come back out there. Well, the immigration lawyer is like, absolutely not. That's not the type of visa that you have. Your visa is one way. It's a single use, which means that you would have to reapply all over again. She's like, what? I thought that, I can come back and forth. And he's like, no, you will have to reapply all over again. And it's within the documents. Had you read your documents, how is it that you did not know this even without reading? Why is this not something that you looked up and knew before bringing your tail out there? Like, I'm so... And then with it being a single use, with y'all being engaged for 2 years, y'all should have been walked down that aisle. Like, it makes no sense. And so now she goes back to Rish and she tells him like, hey, I got to get back to the U.S. and I honestly don't know when I'm going to be able to come back. Girl, what? Just call the relationship goodbye. Because let me tell you something. In 2 years, if y'all have not tied that knot, and you done brought your tail out there, you might as well just go home. Go home, find you an American guy, or at least find you a guy that has citizenship, or do better with your immigration documents, because this makes no sense that she did not know these things beforehand. Even the lawyer was like, who wouldn't know this? Like, they were looking at her like as if she's insane. They were like, this is just American behavior. No, this isn't American behavior, sir. This is Jin behavior. Jin is a nincompoop. We move on to Nicole and Mahmoud, and just as it is every episode, they start off the episode from just arguing, just continuing on their argument from the previous episode. Okay, they're arguing back and forth. They're still talking about the whole, the wardrobe thing, blah, blah, blah. I'm over it. His mother is over it. They end up down at his uncle's place because they want to present Nicole's business idea to them. I don't know why we're presenting it to this uncle. I understand that the uncle sells garments, but the uncle made it very clear that he is not going to be able to help with any of this, okay? So mind you, Nicole is sitting there up inside the living room presenting her designs. The designs, they're like, oh, this is nice. She's like, yeah, I want to present this towards my target audience would be Muslim women, who or, and Muslim American women who may be a cross in between that don't know how to keep it fashion while remaining cover up. And they're just like, oh yeah, that looks nice. But speaking of wardrobe and covering up, why don't you have on your hijab, right? Because mind you, his aunt and his grandmother are sitting there covered up. I mean, Auntie has everything covered except for her eyes, right? And you've got this woman who is sitting here with that useless bob and, her clothes, and they're just like, why aren't you covered? And so, mind you, as he's trying to break it down for them, what we realize is, Mahmoud, you didn't do your research on a lot of things as well. And the uncle goes and says to him, this is something that you need to teach her, right? Like, this is not something that you just tell her to do. You need to teach her. What about prayer? What about all these other things? He has not done any of these things. Like, Mahmoud is so inexperienced, the same way that Nicole has moved about like a 12-year-old in this whole relationship of, oh my God, I met this guy. Oh, 2 days later, I convert. Sure. Okay. And then the day after that, I'm going to go and I'm going to marry. Mahmoud is technically moving the same crazy way as Nicole. It takes two to tango. And the uncle proves that when it's like, listen, you've taught her nothing. Had she had just remained a Christian, then we wouldn't even much be on her like this. Because then we would understand that, hey, she's not a Muslim person. But the fact that she converted and she is moving around like this means that you are not teaching her the way of Islam. You have not taught her these things, and that's your responsibility as her husband. Right? That takes, and I wish that Nicole was able to understand everything they were saying, because to me I was like, exactly, that puts the blame, that shifts it back to Mahmoud where it needs to be at, right? I mean, it needs to be on both of them, honestly, right? But I think that we spend so much time blaming Nicole that we forget that Mahmoud is just as responsible for all of this, just as responsible for this as well. You taught this girl nothing, and at this point, regardless of what you taught her, regardless of, like, it's too late to teach her because she's over it. She's over it. Y'all got no business being married, but I say this every single review. Nicole, go home. Go home. Go home. Go home. For the love of God. It doesn't matter whose God it is, okay? At this point, just the love of God, okay? Go home, girl. Oh, my goodness. And another thing, Mahmoud's grandmother sits next to Nicole and asks him, hey, like, was she dressing, like, was she covered up before you met her? And he lies and says yes. No, she wasn't. No, she wasn't. Like, oh, I'm just over it. We move on to Debbie and Oussama. I laughed, guys. And I laughed because Oussama is a hoot. He's a hoot. Debbie arrives, okay, take her down to the hotel room. They clearly have no chemistry. This is the oddest couple. As I said, it's very hard to look at Oussama in the face, like everything from the eyes to the mouth. Like, it's just very hard to look at him. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's just hard. But they have nothing in common. Nothing is going on here. It's super confusing. But then as they go out to eat, he goes and he says to her, like, listen, yeah, like, because she's like, well, are we going to stay with your parents forever? Because, I'm not comfortable staying there forever. I'm looking at this 70-year-old woman, and I'm thinking, ma'am, this whole conversation is just odd. But whatever. He says to her, listen, you can stay here for a month, you can stay here for 2 months, but you will be going back to the U.S. She's like, what? What did you just say? This man has no plan to marry you, girl. And this is where I have a problem with Oussama, because, mind you, right, he says to her, like, let's backpedal a little bit. She says, well, you should have told me this before I came. We've been here 3 years together. And he goes, no, 3 years on social media is not the same as 3 years. Was it 3 or 2 years? Whatever. But it's not the same as 3 years in reality. But you knew that, Oussama, and you still proposed to her. You knew that, Oussama, and you still let her on. Like, why even propose to her if you have that level of reasoning? Because I agree with you. Like, when he said that, I laughed. I was like, ah. But I had to pause and go, but you knew that. And then she's like, well, why didn't you tell me this before I came? And he's like, because you wouldn't have come. What? That is the most selfish, ridiculous thing ever. I told y'all that man, there's something off about this man. Very, very off. You said that she wouldn't have come if you would have told her that. And that's a bad thing. This woman literally went and packed up her life, so she claims. And you knew good and well beforehand you had no intentions of marrying her. You knew good and well that you didn't consider this relationship seriously. For you to even say, hey, 3 years on social media is not the same as 3 years in reality, which means that you didn't consider this relationship serious. Why did you propose to her? Why did you have her bring her till out here? Why are you on the show? Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Guys, so that's the end of this episode. It was a couple of nicks and turns here, but we made it. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I want to hear your thoughts below. Do y'all think that Oussama was out of line for not telling her beforehand? I definitely think he was. I understand that, hey, you know, social media is not reality. Correct. I agree. Yeah. What do you want with this woman? You want nothing with this woman. Like, it's so just like, what? What is there? And for the upteen time, I just need Nicole to get back to the U.S. But do you think that my mood, based on what his uncle is saying, do you think that he holds as much as to blame, if not more, based on the advice that his uncle gave and the lecture that he gave? Because I think that lecture was needed. Because you steady wanting this girl to do something that you didn't even train her for. And not only did you not train her for, but let me not use the term trained, that you didn't teach her, right? But it's like, what did you want with this American woman? Like, I just don't understand it. Okay, I will speak with you guys later. Like, comment, and subscribe. Talk to you soon. Bye.